Alright, so continuing with the topic of nootropics, nootropics, however you want to pronounce it, I really don't care. I'm going to cover a couple of things here, and I find it weird that people get really defensive about these things, but I don't know how to approach that. I'm not telling you not to take things, I'm just simply telling you to be aware of certain things. So as I go through these, I'm not telling you don't take this. What I'm telling you is that before you take this, be aware of this. So the first one I'm going to kick off with is actually St. John's wort. And I know that a lot of people don't think of it as a nootropic or anything like that, but it certainly does have some evidence that it helps with people that are suffering from depression. And anecdotally, there are people that claim that they actually saw resolution in their symptoms from PSSD, which is a condition that people develop after taking selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So if you take an SSRI medication, sometimes you end up with lasting side effects like anhedonia. And some people report that taking the St. John's wort helps them. What's important to know about St. John's wort, though, is that actually it alters some of your liver enzymes. And so it can actually make other things less effective, like birth control pills or chemotherapy, things like that. It can alter how you metabolize other drugs, so you have to be very careful what you take it with, because like if you're on birth control and you're taking St. John's wort, it could actually cause your birth control to be ineffective. Same thing can happen with chemotherapy drugs. It can actually make your chemotherapy drug less effective because it alters the way that your liver metabolizes it. And something to consider here too is that there's some side effects that people report, like nausea, dizziness, dry mouth, etc. I'm not telling you don't take this. It's just simply, and actually nothing I tell you, I'm never recommending you do or don't take something. I'm just letting you know that you should be aware of these things, because herbs, just like medications, can have side effects. And so it's just important that you're aware of what the side effects are before you take something. So the next one on the list is actually kava. It's often called kava kava. People drink this stuff and they find that it helps them fall asleep. One of the things I'm going to comment on is that there's a study suggesting that kava actually causes liver damage. But then upon looking through that study, it's really not, it's a poorly designed study, and there's a lot of confounding variables, and it's more of a correlation than a causation. So I'm kind of skeptical on the idea that it has liver issues, but it definitely should not be combined with alcohol. So that's the takeaway that I got from that, is just simply that you shouldn't combine it with alcohol. And I would say that probably it would be advisable for you not to combine it with other depressants like sleeping pills. But in any case, the point is there's a study out there suggesting it causes liver damage, but that one's kind of confounded, so I don't know how to interpret the results of that objectively. So it's like, oh, it's an interesting study, but there's some confounding variables that make that one a little bit like, I'm not 100% positive that it causes liver damage by itself. So the next one on the list is ginkgo. Everyone knows ginkgo biloba, and everyone believes that this is such a great benefit here from this herb. I'm not a fan of it in the first place, actually, because it increases serotonin, and I think that things that increase serotonin are probably not advisable for athletes. Athletes tend to benefit from higher dopamine levels and lower serotonin levels, so in my personal opinion, I don't think it's a great choice for athletes. That doesn't mean that someone in the general population might not find some benefit from it. People believe that it improves memory. Some people report, benefits like it helps with altitude sickness, and that's fine. But something you have to consider there is that it also thins your blood. So if you're taking blood thinner medications, like, you don't want to mess with that one. Same thing goes for curcumin, which isn't really a nootropic, but it's a really common supplement that people take for inflammation. It thins your blood. You don't want to combine that with blood thinners. Kind of like how you have to be careful, like if you're on warfarin and stuff like that. Anticoagulants and various medications in that category, you have to be very careful what you take together. Again, I'm not suggesting you do or don't take these things, just that you should be aware that there is an interaction, and obviously you need to discuss that with your doctor. The next one is actually ginger that I want to mention here. So ginger is another one that falls into that same category. You have to be careful about the blood thinning effect. So, it changes how you can clot, and that's why you should be just aware of that. I just kind of trying to put things together in that category. Fish oil falls into that as well. Fish oil can thin your blood. So again, like, there's plenty of people that will tell you like DHA is good for your brain and all these things like that. But it can affect clotting, and as can like golden seal, which is a really popular. I don't think that one's a nootropic at all, but a lot of people take it for immune health. You'll see like echinacea golden seal as a really popular supplement, and that definitely has some evidence showing that it changes how you clot. It can even lower blood pressure. So I've kind of got off on a tangent. We're not really talking about nootropics right now, but I feel like these things are important for people to consider. Garlic falls into that too, actually. If you are taking really high doses of garlic, garlic can thin your blood. In fact, you know what? Like, let's just go down the list and point out that a lot of these things can thin your blood. Like, no different than if you're taking aspirin, right? You should be careful about taking daily aspirin, just because, like, those various things do thin your blood, so they can interact. You have to be careful about that. Ginseng. And ginseng is definitely one that is a nootropic, but other people take it for things like immune health too. Some people claim that it lowers their blood glucose, and that one actually also falls into the category of things that can interact with blood thinning medications. So basically, like, I know like I sound like I'm beating a dead horse here, but you have to be like hyper aware of this, because if people have a clotting disorder, like, this can be life-threatening. Now, don't get me wrong, for the average person who doesn't have a clotting disorder, the risk is probably pretty small. It's kind of like if you were taking a baby aspirin. Like, if you're taking 81 milligrams of aspirin, like, it probably isn't a huge risk for you, no different than if you're taking fish oil and you otherwise are a completely healthy person and you're taking some fish oil. Like, the risk factor is so unbelievably small of you having a bleeding issue with that. But not everyone is in the same category, and so, if you are on any blood thinning medications in the first place, even if you're on daily aspirin, you might not want to combine these things with it. So that's just like something that people need to think about. I'm trying to think of other ones that fall into that category, but I'm kind of drawing a blank on the moment. Like, I already mentioned the garlic is in there, the ginger, the curcumin. A lot of the stuff that's good for anti-inflammatory purposes, like fish oil and stuff like that, it does have a blood thinning effect. Surprise, surprise. Because I guess, if you think about it logically, kind of like how aspirin can have an effect, it's just something to consider. So I'm trying to make this really short, so I'm trying to talk fast, but I already see my little timer here is approaching 8 minutes. And so, like, I don't want to go too far and make these things so long that no one wants to listen to them. But basically, what I'm going to just roundabout come full circle around on here, and to summarize, this is not an exhaustive list, but what I am trying to express here is that before you take anything, you should always take a look and see what the side effects are, and pay attention to the fact that, like, polypharmacy is a real thing. Like, that's actually the 5th leading cause of death. So that's whenever people are given multiple medications, right? So we run studies where people are given a medication, and then the other group gets a placebo. Well, we're only comparing one medication at a time. They don't do studies where they give people, here's 5 or 6 different medications all at once, and let's see what happens. It's not like we're going to put people into a study and be like, well, here's a statin, here's a blood thinner, and here's some metformin, and oh, by the way, we're going to put you on levothyroxine at the same time, and see what happens if there's a drug interaction. And why not throw some aspirin in for good measure? Because people often take aspirin, it's very common. They don't run studies like that. So if anyone ever tells you that they can predict what's going to happen whenever you have a situation of polypharmacy and you're taking 5 different drugs, like, they can't tell you that because there's no studies on it. And what I'm trying to express here is that, very similar to how there are risks in polypharmacy of taking multiple medications, there are risks in the same way of polypharmacy, that if you're taking herbs along with medications, or even if you're combining herbs, you could end up with the same effect. And so all this is just simply a blanket warning message to people to do your research. Like, literally sit down and read through everything you can find on possible side effects and possible interactions. And obviously, if you're on medications, you need to discuss it with your doctor to make sure that it's not going to interact with your medication.